If you have original stone and brick, friend, expose that. That is a gem. Let it shine. Again, budget option here. Use what you've got and then paint the rest however you want to do it. But consider exposing and sealing that original brick.
Welcome to the Imperfectly Empowered podcast with leading DIY health lifestyle blogger, ahnafulmer, empowering you to transform your life, one imperfect day at a time.
Hello and welcome back to the Imperfectly Empowered podcast. I'm your host, ahnafulmer. Are you planning a basement remodel in the future? Would you love to redesign your current basement, make it more efficient, enjoy for hosting, family, friends? We're talking 21 plus design ideas when remodeling a basement. We have remodeled 3 basements now. 2 of them were specifically noted as selling points for the buyers. We have not closed yet on our current house, but this basement's one of my favorite projects that I've done so far. We are going to answer questions like, what is the best way to use the space under the basement stairs? How should I finish the walls? Can I just do drywall or are there other options? Does an exposed joist ceiling really work? How do you do that? How do I know if I have room for a bathroom? What should I do about the floor? And listen, don't miss the number one mistake people make when remodeling a basement at the very end. The number one mistake you need to avoid when remodeling your basement at the end. Don't miss it. Let's get started. Let's first talk about the space under the basement stairs. This often gets converted into a closet. That is maybe the most typical use of this particular space, but consider other options such as creating a bar sink. This is what we did in our second fixer-upper. We knocked out the wall and opened up the space underneath the basement stairs, and we installed base kitchen cabinets and put in a bar sink. And then we created a bar top right across from it. The second fixer-upper was a large basement. This was a 1,000 square foot basement. It had standard ceilings. This one was a large area, so we were able to do a big 8-foot bar in this particular basement. But consider recessing a sink underneath the basement stairs with cabinetry. You can put a closet. You can put open storage shelving, so cubbies that kids can put toys in. You can put baskets, maybe a reading nook. Space underneath the stairs, really on any level of the house, is a great space to put a bench. And then you can even install a little light on the wall, put a couple bookshelves in the wall, and you could create a very, very nice reading nook. Another option is to recess a stand-up freezer under the basement stairs. We did this in our third fixer-upper. I repurposed some materials and created a cabinet area with a sink. And then at the end of it was underneath the stairs where we recessed a stand-up freezer. Most of the time, you'll be able to get a standard size stand-up freezer underneath the stairs. A lot of people keep their stand-up freezers in their basement, so this would be a great way to use the space down there. Let's talk about the ceilings. Basement ceilings. I actually wrote a blog post. It is called 44 Ideas for Your Basement Ceiling. It is full of pictures, 44 pictures of the different textures that I'm going to share with you, ways that you can finish a basement ceiling and get creative with this space. I just want to let you know that you can check out that blog post. The link is on the show notes. Lots and lots of amazing pictures, but let's talk about different options to finish a basement ceiling. First, exposed basement ceilings. So this is those open joists. So the joists that run underneath your first floor, they're there, whether you realize it or not, they are there. An exposed basement ceiling could also be called an open joist ceiling. We did this in this current house because it was a very small basement. The floor to the bottom of the joist is approximately 82 inches. We tore out all of the insulation that was running between the joist bays and left it exposed. Now, what we did, if you are interested in exposed basement ceiling, there's a couple things that I want to share with you that are part of the thought process when designing an exposed basement ceiling. When you install lighting, what we did was, and all of this is code approved in our area. Obviously, code is different from state to state, county to county, but in our particular area, we took the boxes and we installed them between the joists. This is what would normally happen, FYI, for those of you not familiar with this. When you do the recessed ceiling lights, which is what most basements involve, are the recessed ceiling lights. When we installed those, you run them between the joists. There's a little piece that is in the light socket. It's a little plastic piece in the light socket. We left that plastic piece in until we finished spray painting the entire ceiling white. A common question that I got is, how do you finish an exposed basement ceiling? That is what we did. We installed the boxes, if you will, for the recessed lights, the actual like light housing, if you will. And then we left the little plastic piece in, because what I don't recommend is spraying it with that plastic piece out, because now you're spraying the metal piece that helps conduct the electricity for the light bulb. That is one of the keys, is leave that little plastic piece in. The electric wiring in our particular area, I cannot speak for anyone else. The electric wiring was code approved as long as it did not run beneath the joists. So it had to go through the joists, drill a hole, and it would go through the joists, or it could run the length of the joist, but it could not go under the joists. So there was no problem with exposed electric wire, like the rubber lines that you might see running across your ceiling. They just can't run beneath the joists. What we did, we finished everything in the ceiling, everything that possibly needed to be done in the ceiling. We tore out the insulation. We removed all of the approximately 3,652 staples that were used for the insulation. We pulled all of those out. We minimized any extra wire that wasn't necessary. Finish your ceiling and then tape off using cheap plastic, big sheets of plastic. You can get it at any hardware store. We taped off the top of the concrete block and then dropped plastic down the walls. And with a paint sprayer, we sprayed the ceilings white. Everything got sprayed white. I recommend, when you're doing this, using a semi-gloss, not a flat. It will reflect a lot more light. This was, obviously hindsight's 2020 vision. I was not paying attention when Zach and his buddy picked up the ceiling paint. They got a standard flat ceiling paint finish. In this basement, because it was so small, I wanted to actually spray it with a semi-gloss finish. The sheen reflects more light, therefore making it lighter and brighter, which will also make a room feel bigger. If you have a massive basement, maybe you have a 9-foot ceiling basement, you can paint it black. This is actually not an incredibly uncommon thing to do right now, because the industrial look is very popular. Just be very, very careful with that, because it will visually bring the ceiling down. So if you are going to do an exposed ceiling, I would personally recommend white, unless you have a really, really tall basement ceiling. And from a lighting standpoint, the other piece is the rule of thumb. You want your lights to be 4 feet apart. You should have a light every 4 feet from the wall or from another light. Make sure you've got a lot of light, paint it white. I think an exposed basement ceiling is awesome. The only downside is maybe the noise / insulation, but noise is probably the number one downside. Unless you have several layers of protection on your first floor, you will probably hear a lot of noise. I would argue that's the only downside in my experience to the exposed basement ceiling. It looks really, really cool. Again, pictures, lots of pictures on the blog. Plank basement ceilings. Plank ceilings are tongue and groove boards of some sort. They could be made of wood, PVC, MDF board, and they can stand alone or they can be accented with wood beams for that extra farmhouse look. Again, I would be careful with adding beams in a basement ceiling. I probably would not recommend beams unless you have a 9-foot basement ceiling. Again, it's going to visually lower the ceiling, or you could just make them really, really shallow, that they're not incredibly deep. We did this in our first basement, in the Victorian basement. We built sort of like a frame with 2x4s. And in the old Victorian basement, we created a workout space in the old Victorian basement, creepy dungeon-like basement. But we actually did this, and it was amazing how much brighter it made this space. So this is a great option if you want, I don't want to say budget, because this is not necessarily cheap, especially we used the PVC plank tongue and groove boards because it was a little bit damper in the old Victorian basement. Even though we really never had water, it just kind of had that damp feeling. So we used PVC. Really looked cool. It was amazing how much it brightened it up. But I would not say this is a cheaper option per se. But if you have a damper space, a PVC plank ceiling is probably a better way to go. Metal basement ceilings. Now, again, this depends on the look that you're going for, but for a more modern industrial look, you could consider installing reclaimed sheets of metal. I've seen some really cool ceilings, like a carriage house or an old barn or some sort of structure on somebody's property, where they've actually taken old metal roofing material and they have created a ceiling, interior ceiling, using those reclaimed sheets of metal. Depending on how dark the metal is, again, I would just be careful on ceiling height. If you have a ceiling that is less than 8 feet, again, ours was less than 8 feet. 8 feet is 96 inches. Ours was 81 inches. Ours is, in this particular house, ours is about the smallest, pretty much the smallest dimensions you could get and still be code approved. We like squeaked through. I would just be careful if you have ceilings that are a little bit lower in your basement. I don't know that I would do metal. It will make it feel smaller and it will visually drop the ceiling. But if you have 8 feet or more, a metal, like corrugated metal ceiling could be really, really cool. You can also get new sheets, certainly, and age them with vinegar, or there's all kinds of aging techniques for metal would be another option. But hey, if you can find them on Facebook Marketplace or some dude getting rid of a whole bunch of sheets of metal, this is a pretty budget option for finishing a ceiling. Decorative tile basement ceilings. Decorative tiles can be bought at a lot of hardware stores. These are typically glued to a ceiling. These would be a little bit tougher on joists. So it kind of depends on what your ceiling is like or what the covering is. One thought here is if you already have drywall, but it's old, it's coming apart, you could potentially put these decorative tiles over the drywall for sort of an added visual appeal. They some resemble like an embossed ceramic tile. They're actually like styrofoam. We use these in a bathroom in our Victorian fixer-upper. It did look really cool in the bathroom, I have to say. On the ceiling, it really elevated that bathroom. Some also resemble pressed tin, again, kind of going with that metal look, except they're not actually metal. They resemble it. They're faux tin. Some of them can be painted over. Some resemble stone. There's a lot of options with these decorative tiles, and you'd have to get a little creative depending on what your current ceiling is. The standard basement ceiling, probably the most common, is the drop basement ceiling. This is where there's a wire frame that's running the length of your ceiling, and you have those tiles that you kind of lift up into the metal frames. What I don't like about the drop basement ceilings is just that it drops the ceiling. It drops the ceiling unnecessarily lower when you could just go flush up against the joists. So the advantages to drop basement ceilings is, depending on whether you want to DIY it or hire somebody, they can be a cheaper option, especially if you go with budget tiles. The other nice thing is it does make access to water pipes, etc., electric, a little bit easier, because you can just push up a tile and get to where you need to go. So you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons here. Drop basement ceilings are a good budget option and are certainly possible to DIY. Here's also a thought. If you want to go in between, this is what we did in our second fixer upper, that 1,000 square foot basement. We met our contractor halfway. The ceiling guys, I said, hey, you install the wire frame, you hang all of that, we will put in the tiles. Saved us money because of the time. So that would be another option if you sort of want to meet halfway. Coffered basement ceilings. These are a higher end look. I'll be completely honest. Sometimes I think this is wasted in a basement unless you're using your basement a lot, or you sort of want that classy high-end bar sort of a look. The coffered basement ceilings it's referring to box designs. It's like a box formation with wood more often than not, usually over drywall. There's various ways to finish the inside of the boxes of a coffered ceiling. It's a higher end look. Again, if I'm going to spend the time and the money to install a coffered ceiling, I'd rather do it in a library or somewhere else. But maybe your basement that's the look that you're going for. A coffered basement ceiling would be a way to go if you want that look. Wood beam basement ceilings. Wood beams can be installed over any existing ceiling. You could have drywall, there could be tiles, there could be those planks, those tongue and groove planks that I was talking about. Adding beams definitely adds visual appeal. I think they especially look nice when it's a warm wood against a white ceiling. So whether it's a white drywalled ceiling or a white plank, the tongue and groove plank ceiling. Again, I would be careful if it is less than 8 feet. I would not personally add wood beams. It will drop the overall height of your ceiling. If you have greater than 8 feet, you could consider it. Again, maybe keep them shallow. If you have 9 feet, certainly it might help warm up the space actually and add a little bit more texture and dimension to a large area. Let's talk about the actual design. So one of the primary reasons that people enjoy remodeling a basement is with the intent to host either a playroom or a place where if you're having large groups of people over, maybe it's for the Super Bowl, maybe it's for a party, whatever. Most people are somewhere in their basement trying to design an entertainment area where there's a TV and seating. Not always, but this is one of the most common spaces people are incorporating into their basement. I want to give you several design ideas with this particular area. First of all, if you have a really large basement, our second basement, again, 1,000 square feet, the whole thing was very, very open. In this case, it was important to define the seating area with a large rug. You guys know how I feel about rugs. I love rugs. They're so wonderful. But one of the purposes that you can use for them is to help define a seating area, especially when you have a very, very open concept design. But for smaller basements, one of the ways that you can create a multi-purpose entertainment area is to consider putting in sofas or seating arrangements that can be easily moved if you're going to entertain larger groups of people. So there's two different trains of thought here. If you have a really massive basement, you actually want to define this space very clearly. A big sectional, a big coffee table, a big rug, because you want to actually make it feel a little bit cozier, because otherwise it gets lost in this massive open space. But for smaller basements, don't waste any square inch that you have. What I recommend is, instead of a big sectional that could be more difficult to move, consider relatively easy to move sofas. Maybe it's a love seat and then a larger sofa and then one of those big beanbag chairs, and then put them on the glide. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these, but there's like little glide pieces. They're almost like plastic, but you can put them under the feet of your furniture to make moving them really easy. And then they also don't scratch. But the advantage to this is that if you have larger groups of people and you want to open up the space more, then you can move these up against a wall, or you can rearrange them to maximize the space that you need. Here's another hack: is create this multi-purpose entertainment area with a futon, so that your entertainment area in your basement can also double as a guest bedroom. So with a futon, you have the sofa, and then you can collapse it and create a guest bed. We did do this as well in our second house. We had several people stay down there, and it's nice because then, especially when you've added a bathroom, which we will talk about, you are able to also have a guest bedroom. Let's talk about the walls. We talked about the ceiling. We've talked about random areas all over the place in the basement, but let's talk about finishing the walls. You guys know I like texture. I am not the white paint everywhere kind of girl, despite the fact that this room is painted white behind me. I love texture in a house. Every room, very nearly every room, I include a statement piece and or texture. Walls are a great way to think through adding texture. There's a lot of options other than drywall to finish basement walls. Or if you're going to use drywall and you're going to frame it out and install drywall, consider an accent wall to give some dimension to the space. In this third fixer-upper, again, we wanted to maximize the space. If we framed out the walls for drywall, we would have lost a lot of space from the floor plan standpoint, because we would have the whole room would have kind of closed in a little bit, because we would have needed, approximately 3.5 inches plus the drywall. We would have lost 4 inches, pretty much the whole perimeter of the basement. So we painted the concrete block and went for a more industrial feel. We had exposed conduit running down the wall, metal conduit into a metal electric box. And we had the open concept ceiling. So we really tried to embrace this more kind of open concept feel with the concrete blocks and the exposed ceiling and the conduit. And it's also it was a pretty budget option too. Drywall would have been a lot more expensive. So consider just painting the concrete block, especially if it's already waterproofed. There's really no need to add drywall, especially if your concrete block is waterproofed. You can drywall and then consider somewhere adding faux brick or stone paneling. This is what we did in our second fixer-upper. The whole thing was drywalled. Again, it was a really big space, so I wasn't concerned about losing space with drywall. But under those basement stairs where we put a bar sink, I added faux stone paneling. It looked like dry stack stone. It was from Home Depot. The link is included in the show notes. And I ran the length. It was kind of like the backsplash, if you will. One of my favorite renovations. I loved our second basement. I love the third one too, but the second basement especially, I had a lot of room to work with, but it instantly added texture to a very large open space. I would not recommend tons and tons of faux stone paneling, especially faux stone, because it is not real stone. So the nice thing is using it as a backsplash. It's not right in your face. You're not brushing up against it. It's hard to even tell that it's faux. Brick paneling is the same way, faux brick paneling. You can consider putting it on an accent wall, on a small accent wall, or consider wrapping it around a bar. So if you have an island anywhere in the basement, consider the brick paneling around the bar. You could also consider a faux stone or brick along the basement stairs wall. You don't want too much. Less is more. You want an accent. You want to add texture. So again, this would be a mixture of both drywalling and adding texture through faux stone or faux brick paneling. Another option, this is what we did in our first fixer-upper, the Old Victorian. If there is original stone or brick in your basement, expose it. Expose it. So what I did, it nearly killed me. I very nearly died. People ask me, what's your least favorite project ever? This is up there. In our very first Victorian, in our fixer-upper, I was determined to expose this beautiful stone and brick in the basement where I was doing this craft area. So I took a power washer and I put it on stripping mode. It's almost like it spins. It's high powered. Like you don't want to touch it. It would hurt your skin, but it strips the plaster that was over the stone and the brick. It stripped it off, but it was freezing cold. I was soaking wet. It was probably 35 degrees, 40 degrees when I was doing this. So it's really my own fault, but I was impatient and I couldn't wait to do it. And it looked really cool. Pictures again included. But the point is this: if you have original stone or brick, expose it, strip it with, however you want to do it, or by hand if you're brave enough. I think the power washer works quite well. And then you seal it. You seal it. This is the key. You want to get a really big, thick bristled brush because full well there's dust that comes off of it because it's stone, it's brick, it's old. So you want to wipe it down after you've stripped the plaster and then take a shop vac or even just a hand dust brush, and you want to suck up as much of the loosened debris as possible, as much of it as possible. And then you can either spray or brush on a dry lock sealer. Dry lock is literally the name of the sealer that I used in that basement. I did this in multiple areas. It worked very, very well. And you put it on really, really thick. It also brightens up the stone or the brick, really allows the colors to come through, but it seals it so that there's not just this constant fine layer of dust. If there's massive holes, you can use just like a concrete mix and patch it a little bit if you want to. But if you have original stone and brick, friend, expose that. That is a gem. Let it shine. Again, budget option here. Use what you've got. And then drywall the rest or whatever, paint the rest, however you want to do it. But consider exposing and sealing that original brick or stone. All right, we've talked ceilings. We've talked walls. Oh, I want to share this super, super budget friendly way to add texture on an accent wall. I almost forgot to share this. In this basement, I was determined to add my texture, even though it was a super budget remodel. We were really, really careful how much we were spending. And I still was determined I need an accent wall somewhere. You guys, I found this wallpaper. It's an amazing faux stone wallpaper. And you would not believe how real it looks. Somehow, like the printing press or whoever printed this, it looks multidimensional. It really does. People always touch it when they come down because they can't believe it's wallpaper. So the link will be in the show notes. I'll make sure it's there, pictures too. But if you want a really budget friendly where you're not buying faux stone paneling or you don't want to mess with stone or brick, whatever, this wallpaper is incredible. Less is more though. I would not do your entire basement, just accent or a backsplash area. Would look incredible with this wallpaper. I'll make sure that is included. Let's talk about another space. We talked about the entertainment space. play areas for kids, probably number one, number two, I don't know. One of the primary purposes for a basement, right? Send the kids to the basement. Let the mess be somewhere else. And there's a couple things that I want to share with you to consider when designing a play area for kids in a basement. There's lots of different ways to help designate this space, but I want to share a hack, especially if you have younger children. I would say children ages 10 and lower, is to create a large custom size play table to help define the kids' play area. I don't know about you, but last time I looked, play tables for kids are so expensive. They get so creative. Like they put these little designs on them, or train village, is imprinted on the top of it, or there's little, they're so expensive is the bottom line. Why are these so expensive? So I faced this in our second fixer upper. All three of our kids were very young, at the ages where they wanted a play table that they could stand at, but I was not willing to spend a ridiculous amount of money for these kids' play tables. So here's what I did, and it worked amazingly well. I bought a super cheap table, like the one from Walmart that I have linked in the show notes, and I cut the legs down to play table height. That's it. I bought a super cheap dinner table size table, and I just cut the legs down to the appropriate play table height. Here is a tip for determining how high the table should be. Ages 2 to 4, the standard table height, like a play table, is approximately 20 to 22 inches. Ages 5 to 7, table height is best suited around 22 to 25 inches. 8 to 10 years old, approximately 24 to 29 inches. So again, you cut the 4 legs down to the appropriate height. Obviously, if you have kids that span that whole age range, I would probably go somewhere in the middle. And then an extra hack is to maximize the storage space underneath that table and use leftover fabric or window valances, for example, and staple them on the inside of the table so that it goes from the inside, like the top of the table, to the floor. And then slide big plastic storage bins underneath the table for toy storage. And then you don't see the toy storage because of the cute fabric that is running all around the table. There you go. Budget friendly, big play table for kids, storage underneath. Use this hack. My kids got many, many hours of play with that big table. For smaller spaces, don't forget your vertical storage for kids. Here is a design idea. If you want to create a little craft area, but you don't have a big space for a table, consider buying upper kitchen cabinets. Upper kitchen cabinets, the standard depth is 12 inches. Put them along a wall, and you want the height to be approximately 30 inches. So you're going to buy upper kitchen cabinets, 12 inches deep, 36 inches high, and you're going to create a countertop that is mounted up against a wall. Try to picture this with me. You're going to set the kitchen cabinets on the floor, the upper kitchen cabinets on the floor. And as a side note, then remember your knobs are going to be at the top. Like you're not going to put them on the bottom like you would a standard upper kitchen cabinet, right? Move the knobs up to the top. And then you put stools in between and a countertop over the kitchen cabinets. So these upper kitchen cabinets are actually acting like a base for this countertop. You could use wood. You could create your own countertop. You could find a leftover countertop or repurpose an old one and cut it down to approximately 12 to 18 inches deep. 12 inches deep is kind of a standard like kitchen island bar overhang. So 12 inches would be just fine. So then you're going to put bar stools underneath. Then you can mount floating shelves above the bar top against the wall. You can put floating baskets, the baskets that you would drill into the wall, that you can put pencils, crayons, markers. Get the baskets that are for paper size. You can put papers there. Don't forget vertical space. This is an excellent idea for a craft space for your kids. It would take up next to no room on the floor. The footprint of this space is so small. Get creative. Don't forget about your vertical storage. Use those upper kitchen cabinets to create this beautiful craft space for your kids and remodel that basement. Get it, girl. All right. What's next? Repurpose an old kitchen sink and countertop for a laundry craft room. This is kind of related to what we were just talking about, but I have done this in all 3 of our fixer-uppers. I was trying to run through my head. Many finished basements, even unfinished basements, already have a hot and cold water hookup, which means this addition is super, super easy. A laundry craft room space, if you have hot and cold water hookup already in your basement, if your laundry room's already in your basement, if you have water of any sort in your basement, like you have a half bath, certainly if you have a full bath, adding this extra space is super easy. It's going to be much cheaper if water lines and, a grinder pump or whatever already exist in the basement. But even if not, we've done it from scratch. And relatively speaking, when you can offset costs in other ways, it is 100% worth it on resale. So repurpose an old kitchen sink and countertop by installing it over budget base kitchen cabinets. So in our Victorian, the original owners, bless their heart, had the laundry in the super creepy basement, the dungeon-like basement that was the fixer-upper. And I moved the laundry to the first floor bathroom, and then I converted that space in the basement into a craft area. So I took the sink and the countertop that was in the kitchen, as well as the cabinets that we removed, and I designed it into this craft room space. I cut down the countertop to fit over top of the base cabinets, and I fit it into the space. I cut things down, fit them into the space, and created a craft room. In our second fixer-upper, I took the sink countertop, and the island countertop from the kitchen, and I created a separate craft room in our second fixer-upper basement. I bought budget cabinets from my very favorite wholesale cabinet company, Lillian Cabinets. Massive fan of Lillian Cabinets. You will see them all over my blog. I've used them many, many times, including my kitchen renovations. And their cheapest line in white is called Summit Shaker White. So I bought cabinets in Summit Shaker White from Lillian Cabinets, link included in show notes. And then I used them with the countertop and the sink that I reclaimed, or I should say repurposed from the kitchen, and created this whole nother room, almost like another kitchen, if you will, in the basement. And I created a really cool craft space on the island. And certainly there was tons and tons of storage then. It's also nice. It's sort of nice too, because you have that sink that can also function as, wash all your paintbrushes. It's just nice to have that utility sink somewhere else so that you're not just using your kitchen sink. In this fixer-upper, the third fixer-upper, I repurposed the sink, but then I built my own countertops with repurposed oak planks that we pulled up from this kitchen. There is a tutorial on the blog, link included in the show notes. Lots of amazing resources, guys, in this podcast episode. Lots of resources. Built my own countertops, and then used, again, Lillian Cabinets in Summit Shaker White to fit underneath this space. This was, again, a smaller space than the second fixer-upper. If you're repurposing an old countertop and you would like to spruce it up a little bit, in my second fixer-upper, I used Rust-Oleum's Countertop Transformation Kit and finished it in black. I think it's called Onyx. Highly recommend Rust-Oleum's Countertop Transformation Kit. This is a little bit of an undertaking, but I loved the finished result. And the people that bought our homes absolutely loved the basement. We haven't closed on this third one yet, so I don't know what it is about this house that they will especially love. But in our first two homes, both buyers specifically commented on how much they loved what we did with the basement. So take that for what you will and get real creative with your leftover materials in the basement. Let's talk more about spaces. We're kind of going back and forth here between the remodel piece and the design piece, all kinds of ideas, but let's talk about a game space. This is kind of taking it sort of to the next level. If you're not a game player, maybe you don't want this space, but as you're looking at your basement and you're thinking about these different spaces, these different design ideas, consider the idea of a game space. What this means is you take a table, it may not be a massive one, but you think about the lighting that would be required, as well as the space that would be required to have a table that maybe you can host guys' poker night, or maybe you like to de-stress by putting a puzzle together. You could have like a permanent puzzle table. Maybe you love playing games as a family. Maybe you love hosting people and you want a table that people can sit around while watching TV and playing a game or a card game together. So design a space. If you can really think ahead, try to make sure it's a space that you can include direct down lighting so that you would install a light directly over the table. This table could be placed behind your seating, like behind a sofa. So guests could still see your TV. It could even be pushed up against a wall if you don't want to take up too much of the footprint in your kind of the middle of your basement. It could also potentially go in like a corner. So if you do a round table that you could still fit people around, you could put this table in a corner with that light, specifically the down lighting over the table. But this is a really fun thing if you have a bigger space to consider, because you'd be amazed how often it will get used. We did this in our second basement. Again, it was a bigger one, but it got used all of the time. People oftentimes sat at that table before they even did sofas. I don't know why. People like to sit around tables. They gravitate to them. So anyway, consider a game space. Put shelving if you really want to define the space. Put built-in shelving, especially if it's in a corner, is kind of the ideal place for it. Put shelving, floor to ceiling shelving, and have all your games. Make it really easy to spend quality time together as a family, making memory, playing games. Put all your puzzles there, whatever you want there, books if you want, and create that game space. All right, flooring. This is a really, really common question I get. What should I put on the floor of the basement? Please, please, please take my advice. Don't put carpet in your basement. Don't put carpet on your basement floor. I have yet to meet somebody who has put carpet in their basement floor who has not at some point had the panic sensation because there's water in their basement and they have to pull it back and dry it, or they got to get the humidifier there, as well as every fan in the neighborhood to quick dry it out. I do not recommend carpet in basements. I know it's kind of the easy button, but I do not recommend carpet in basements. My number one recommendation is LVP flooring, luxury vinyl plank flooring. Again, we've done this in 2 basements now. There's multiple options for luxury vinyl plank flooring. I've installed a lot of flooring in the last 9 years. And the flooring that I installed in this basement, this third fixer-upper, has hands down been my favorite of all of the LVP that I have installed so far. It was not expensive. It looks incredible. And the design concept behind it is genius. So for those of you not familiar with luxury vinyl plank flooring, there's multiple options. You can do click and lock. That's called a floating floor, meaning it doesn't actually stick to the floor beneath it or the concrete or the subfloor, whatever is beneath it. It stays in place because it clicks and locks together. And then, it's pushed up against the sides of the wall of the room. And that's how it stays in place. However, the downside with this is that it pulls apart over time. It eventually, that click and lock slowly starts to pull apart, or it can warp, or it can kind of curl up. So there's click and lock. There is peel and stick. I did this I've done a lot of click and lock, by the way. A lot of click and lock. Peel and stick. The only peel and stick that I did was in our second basement. I also put it in one of these bathrooms. The peel and stick in the basement did work very well. It was budget friendly. It did still look really good. It is a bugger to install. I mean, it is miserable to install. It sticks on you everywhere. It is so hard to just keep it off of you because you're literally peeling the sheet. And then it is like the stickiest material ever on the back of these entire planks. It did work well as long as you prep your floor right. The longevity, at least in our second home, again, we weren't there for super long, but I did like the peel and stick. It was such a pain to install. There's also glue down. I have never done a glue down flooring, so I cannot speak to it. I would guess it is also a pain. That's me being, that's just me thinking if peel and stick was annoying, I would think gluing it down would be annoying too. Okay, let me tell you, I'm too excited. Enough of that. That's how LVP works. But Home Depot, I feel like this thing should be sponsored by Home Depot because I'm about to rave on them for a second here, are the first that I have found this flooring where it's, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on what it's called. But the bottom line is it's a grip edge. The only sticky part is the tongue and grooved edge. So it's tongue and groove, but the only sticky part is that. So it doesn't stick to the floor. So it's kind of like the floating click and lock idea, but it is like the peel and stick in that you peel off the cover and it reveals a super sticky tongue and groove edge. And you press that down onto itself. I read the reviews on Home Depot before I bought this. Super budget friendly, by the way. I'm blanking on what it cost. I want to say $169 a square foot. Looks amazing. We used khaki oak. The link is in the show notes, pictures included. I would absolutely do this again when we build, not necessarily for like the main space in the house that we're going to build per se, but a basement. This was a phenomenal option. Phenomenal option. So I highly recommend the grip edge design. LVP, it's waterproof or water resistant. It is so easy to clean. Yes, it creates a hard floor. That's the number one complaint that I hear is, yeah, but your floor is so hard and cold. You guys, this is where rugs come in. Buy really, really big area rugs. But then when you have that heavy rain, you're not panicking and pulling up carpet and borrowing the whole neighborhood's, fan collection. LVP flooring, khaki oak, the grip edge design, Home Depot. I included the link. This is not sponsored by Home Depot, by the way. All opinions expressed are my own and are not compensated by them. Okay, last but not least, this is the number one mistake that people make when remodeling a basement. The number one mistake people make when remodeling a basement. Are you ready for it? They don't think they have the space or the budget for a full bathroom. And so they opt out of a bathroom. They opt out of a full bathroom. I have fully designed and renovated 2 basements now. The Victorian, we were like piecemealing the rooms. Again, it wasn't going, none of it counted as finished square feet in the Victorian. I just made it useful space. But in the second 2 houses, the last 2 houses, I incorporated a full bathroom into the design of both. At our second house, or the second fixer-upper, we had neighbors coming in and being like, oh my gosh, I never even thought to install a full bathroom there. Like they couldn't believe I completely changed the footprint of the basement. And they were like, oh my word, that's brilliant. I didn't even think about putting a full bathroom down there. In this basement, I got super creative. This is only a 600 square foot basement. Again, low ceiling. You should see the before pictures. I actually had some people be like, are you even going to bother finishing this basement? Absolutely. Absolutely. Here is the secret to adding a full bathroom to your basement that people don't realize. And you guys, everything was approved by code. Let me also throw that out there. We didn't just like throw in this full bathroom and then say good luck. This is code approved. Here's the secret. If you have stairs descending into your basement, then you have space for a full bathroom. If you have stairs descending into your basement, then you have the space for a full bathroom. I am giving you guys, for anyone who wants it, the exact dimensions, the exact floor plan of the smallest possible bathroom that most codes will approve so that you can design accordingly. If you have stairs, you can have a full bathroom. There's a link to click in the show notes. You just enter your email. It's free. You're not going to get charged for anything. Don't panic. You can enter your email, and then to your email, you will receive a PDF of the exact dimensions, not only the dimensions, meaning like the interior space, the size of the shower tub combo, the exact toilet size, the exact sink size. I am also going to include product links. They are all from Home Depot. Again, this is not sponsored by Home Depot, but it sounds like it should be. And I'm going to share with you exactly what we did in this basement, because I had so many people say, how on earth are you going to fit a full bathroom down here? And you guys, it's a great space. The basement actually feels quite open. And the bathroom, somebody that walked into it, one of our friends came over and walked into it, and she said, oh my word, I can't believe how big this bathroom feels. All right. I am sharing with you the exact floor plan, the dimensions, the specs. You can give it to your contractor. You guys can use it yourselves. When you are remodeling a basement, get your money's worth. You will not regret putting a full bathroom in your basement. Click on the link in the show notes, enter your email, and it will send you the PDF, including the product links, because this will be the icing on the cake of your basement remodel. Again, if you've got basement stairs, then you have the space for a bathroom. I hope you got something out of all of these design ideas, sharing from our last 3 basement remodels. Again, apparently basements are my specialty, so I'm being told. I'll take it. I have nothing else to write home about. So at least I have basement remodels. And good luck remodeling your basement. It's going to look amazing. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if you have any questions. Have a great day. Hey guys, Anna here. If you found this video helpful, then you do not want to miss this video right here beside me on the screen. Click on it. I know you're going to enjoy it. You guys, remember, you cannot be redefined, only redeveloped, one imperfect day at a time. Your story matters, and you are loved.